Hey everyone, it's Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy here, and welcome to another Lunch with Norm, the e-commerce and Amazon FBA podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to master the hiring process, reduce failed hires, and increase diversity. We're also going to be talking about why is bias in the hiring process, what are the most common forms of bias, and how can you reduce or mitigate these biases. All right. Welcome to another Lunch with Norm, the e-commerce and Amazon FBA podcast.
Lunch with Norm. Lunch with Norm. Lunch with Norm.
All right, here we go with another serial entrepreneur, an angel investor. Prior to starting the Mothership, Ben spent the last few years helping other entrepreneurs cope with rapid growth through mentoring, events, and a program generated as a result of the MIT Regional Accelerator Initiative. Today, first-time guest, Ben Fletcher. But before we get to Ben, we're going to have a word from our sponsor. I want to give a quick shout out to an incredible group of sponsors who help keep our podcast running. The Lunch with Norm podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of the following sponsors: Post Purchase Pro, Clear Ads, Goldstein Patent Law, Honu Worldwide, Netfluence.co, Video Telepathy, Startup Club, and Dragonfish Brand Management. I just want to let our sponsors know you're awesome. Now let's get back to the show. All right, where is the boy Blunder?
Hello, that's me.
You look like you're in a different area.
I am actually right above you
you're
as we
calm, there's no stress.
I know.
That's because you're home.
Just enjoying a wonderful Wednesday with the fam.
With Mama and Papa.
That's right.
Right. Hey, did you notice over in the comments section, Andy Craig is back?
Andy is here. Yes, good to see you, Andy.
Hope all is well with you. And Luke and Connor and Rad is back. Rad is back as well. This is very cool. All right, guys. Yeah. Well, it's always good to see listeners that have just wandered away for a while, and then we sent them $20 and they're back now, which is great.
Yeah, so it's good to see Cool Hand 99, Connor, Andy, Rad. Let us know if you're watching, where you're watching from. We have Amazon Elite, aka Tom, all the way from London. And we have a great giveaway too this podcast, which we do every single podcast. So stick around to learn more about that. Also, don't forget to join our Facebook group. That's the Lunch with Norm, Amazon FBA and e-commerce collective. That's over in the descriptions that you can go and check out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel too. We do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Every week. So if you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe down below, and don't forget to smash those like buttons too. And let me see yes, Andy, you weren't supposed to tell anyone about that, but he said Kelsey told me $40. And I think we can get started. If you have any questions about today's episode, feel free to put them over in the comment sections, and we will be getting to them. Usually about halfway through the show, we start going over there. So it's a great topic, and I can't wait for today's episode.
All right. So Kelsey's frozen, so it's perfect timing to get going. All right. So if you do have questions, comments, throw them over in the comment section. I think we're going to have lots of questions today. I know this is a topic that a lot of people, especially once they're just going from being a solopreneur to that next level, they're always wondering, how can they improve their hiring? I know I've done it in the past where I've hired people and they were just bad hires, really bad hires. And it cost me time and money just because I did it wrong. So I can't wait to talk further with Ben about this. Questions in the comments section. Please make sure you ask them early because I don't know how many questions are going to be in and we want to answer them all. And now sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, enjoy the episode. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, Norm. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go. Okay. Yeah. So I won't back into the corner too bad. So I hope that we're going to get lots of questions today. I know a lot of the people, a lot of the listeners are in that in between area where they're going from becoming like they've got a product. The product has been a side hustle for them, and now it's starting to make money. Now they're starting to say, "Hey, I can do this. I'm a solopreneur," but now it's exceeding what they've thought, and they got to hire somebody, and they don't know the first thing about it because they've never done it in the past. So this is great, and I can't wait to get into this, dig into it, and ask you a few questions. But first, before I get started, I mentioned something in the intro, and I wanted to make sure people understood this. And that's before we even get started. Can you explain what the heck the mothership is?
Okay, so we're an e-commerce aggregator. I think that's been quite popularized with the rise of the FBA aggregators. I think the way we see it is slightly different from, I think, the typical Amazon aggregation model, which is, I think, Amazon aggregation, and I'm probably massively typecasting, but it's about achieving efficiencies and scale, and bringing kind of Amazon marketing expertise to Amazon brands, which is all good. What we think is the opportunity is to build new consumer brands, because there are thousands, well, there are millions of new kind of solo entrepreneur businesses or businesses that have achieved a significant amount of scale, probably tens of thousands that are really achieved quite significant scale because of the rise of Amazon and Shopify and other e-commerce platforms. But generally, because as you were saying in your intro, a lot of them are quite early stages. Maybe they've only got 1 or 2 employees. It's really hard for them to be expert at everything. So maybe they've cracked Amazon, maybe they've cracked Facebook, but they haven't cracked all the different channels. Maybe they haven't worked out how to do international expansion. So we can kind of bring that expertise to grow those additional channels, grow those additional geographies. But the big game for us is, can we build them into new kind of consumer brands? So they have to be high quality products, but there's a real difference between a product that you just managed to sell through paid social or whatever your platform is, and one which has a real brand reputation. So and those products that have that brand reputation are more highly valued. So our idea is you buy those businesses, you help them grow by optimizing their existing channels, launching new products, new geographies. But the big game is to turn them into new kind of recognizable brands.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because I thought you were going to say, something that had to wear a tinfoil hat on my head or something. So the mothership, okay,
Yeah.
aggregator. There we go. Perfect. All right, now let's talk about bias in hiring. Why is that a problem?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what we're trying to do is hire the best person for our organization that's going to fit in really nicely. And there's a lot of ways in which the human brain works that make that a difficult process. So I think I've always been interested in kind of rationality and biases. I've always, we tend to think that we're very rational humans, but actually we're prone to all these kind of biases that make us totally irrational, but we don't know. They're all kind of perfectly reasonable things from when we evolved. They were kind of rational approaches to how you'd survive, but they massively oversimplify the world. And if you follow those inputs, then you will kind of make the wrong decisions. I just thought I'd give you one just sort of example of biases and how you were kind of blind to them ourselves, which is if you show a kind of 2 groups of men a picture of a car, and in one example, the car has an attractive woman standing next to it, and one they don't, the men that are shown the picture of the car with the attractive woman in it will tend to rate that car higher in all categories of design, performance, speed, and so on. Obviously, if you turn around to one of those men that had scored it above average and said you were influenced by the fact that there was an attractive woman in the picture, they would obviously turn around to you and say, that's total nonsense. That had nothing to do with my decision at all. And maybe actually in that case of that specific person, maybe it didn't have any impact, you don't know. But the fact that on average, people will tend to rate the car faster, better designed, more expensive, whatever it is, shows that we're biased, but we're blind to it.
I used to see this at trade shows all the time. I don't really go to that many trade shows that often. I go to conferences now, mostly Amazon or e-commerce based. But when I used to go to trade shows, that's what they would do. They would have these Attractive women in front of the booth. I remember even a cigar roller who would just bring in beautiful women, and what would happen? It would give you traffic. People, it's not necessarily the brand that you went to see. It was, oh, they had something there that's driving me over to the booth. And even if they were in the background, or even if the photos were like that, but it goes way beyond that. Like it could be the colors that you're using in your booth. It could be, there's a bias towards a certain color or age or whatever it is. It is so crazy. And you know what? I experienced this when I had one of my first companies where we were growing really fast. And one of the biggest problems, and one of the biggest problems I had with hiring, was I was trying to hire too many people like myself. Like, it's that personality match. And somebody came in and, they were like more of a deer in the headlights, or like accounting position. Although I did hire one accountant that was crazy, kind of more like my personality. But the accountants that I generally, and this is biased, but it was a completely different mindset than mine. The best accountants that worked for had actually a personality I had, and I had to find that out the hard way. That's the same thing with employees that I had. I had to look at different things, and it had to be, I didn't want to see people. I didn't want, like I used to have interview. I didn't want to see the person. I'd have somebody else interview, and then I would get the best group that I thought were the best, and then try to take it from there. Because if I saw the person, I know in the back of my mind that I couldn't trust myself.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a kind of classic thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be kind of confident of your own opinions, and that has pros and cons. If you didn't have that confidence, you probably would never get started and do anything. But if you make a mistake, you're also confident that you're doing the right thing, even though you're making a mistake. I think the thing that you were talking about, there's a bias called affinity bias. And that's just saying that you like people that are like you. And if you are a kind of I'm stereotyping massively here, and I actually don't agree this is necessarily right, but there's a stereotype that salespeople are kind of gregarious and outgoing and so on, and accountants are maybe more shy and retiring. So if you're a salesperson type person and you're trying to hire accountants, are you going to try and hire the accountant that just comes across best in the interview, not the one that is actually really, really good at their job? I think there's another really massive bias, which is the halo effect. The halo effect is the one that we're talking about when we talk about the attractive girl at the booth, or in the car, or when a celebrity endorses a product or something. You think, oh, I like this person, and therefore if they say this is a good product, I should buy it. And in hiring, where that manifests itself is, you're like, oh, this person went to a great university. Oh, they're at Yale or they're at Harvard. They must be amazing. Not necessarily. I mean, obviously it's a good sign if someone's got into a top university, but it may not make them fantastic for you. As depends on what your job is and whether the person's a good fit. Often people will say, "Oh, this person worked at Facebook, so they must be amazing." Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's a good sign that they got into Facebook because it's a very competitive company. But it may be that they were a great person for Facebook, but they're not a great person for you. So it doesn't mean just because they got into one of those kind of trophy brand name companies that they're going to be a great employee. So what happens is that halo effect means that you see that great university or that great company on their CV, and then you tend to uprate all of the other stuff on their CV because you're seeing it through the lens of this very positive lens. Effectively, you're rating the car faster, better designed, or whatever, because you've latched onto this factor like their university or place of work.
So to get around all of this, because a lot of people have biases that they don't realize, how do you get around it?
Yeah, so I think some of the stuff is really, I mean, we stereotype people massively, and I'll just give you an example from, we use a platform called Applied, Be Applied, is how you find them, and they've done a lot of research into bias in hiring. One of the things they did, they looked at the callback rates for different candidates. So they applied exactly the same CV, and in the first CV, the person's called Sandra Bauer, and it's a white woman just dressed in a blouse or something, and that person gets a 19% callback with this set of skills that they've put on. In the next one, everything else exactly the same, but she's called Miriam Ozturk, so she's got a kind of Turkish sounding name. That person gets a 14% a callback rate. And in the final example, she's called Miriam Ozturk and she's wearing a headscarf, and that person gets a 4% response rate. So people tend to, they've got biases about religion, about race, about sex, about politics. And if those are often the first things you see on a CV. You get someone's name and you deduce a lot of stuff about their religion, their sex, and so on from that. So the first thing you need to do is to take off any references to age, sex, race, and so on. So you have to have a kind of blind hiring process, but you're also trying to remove those obvious clues about, oh, I went to this great university, or I worked for this amazing company, because that's also going to influence you. I think there's also often people think if someone worked for one of your competitors doing a very similar job, I mean, that's kind of how the recruitment process works. It's kind of broken from the beginning. So I say I want to hire a marketing person for my e-commerce brand. So what's really tempting for me is to look for someone that had exactly the job title I'm looking for at another e-commerce company, ideally someone a bit bigger than me that I really respect. And so I'm then, if I've got all those biases happening at the same time, I'm looking for someone that's kind of looks like me, sounds like me, maybe the same sex as me, Western sounding name, all of that sort of stuff. And I want them to have this very specific job title, and I want them to be from this very specific set of companies. I'm really restricting my talent pool down to a really very small group of people. But also, the way that I've done that filtering process doesn't mean that I'm going to hire the people that are necessarily best for the job. I think particularly if you think the way the modern world works is your job is not, it's not like you hire a plumber and because they're used to doing so many plumbing jobs, all the plumbing is the same and you just know they can do it. The world's changing. What used to work on Amazon marketing last year doesn't work this year. Something new will work. Something new on Facebook will work. Something else has stopped working. So you're constantly learning. So the idea that someone with just this sort of wealth of experience is going to be brilliant for you doesn't necessarily apply anyway. So you want to break down those traditional kind of hooks that you're going to look at to hire someone. So one of the, so take off the names of the people, take off any references to sex and religion and even the universities and jobs. So how do you do that? Well, what we do is we use this platform Applied, but you can put together the same thing yourself with a type form. We ask everyone 3 to 5 questions that we think are really important that someone should be able to answer in order to be able to do the job effectively. Those are partly, I would say, sort of half and half for us, cultural and half job specific. So we generally ask them a question. I'm trying to think of an example. So when we're hiring for someone for Facebook, for example, we might ask them, tell us about a time that you had an underperforming campaign and what did you do in order to make that campaign work? So that's great. That gets to show them that they've got specific skills that would be good. But then we'd also ask them a question, which is something like, show us a time that you had to go above and beyond and achieve something fantastic, or tell us about a time that you did something that didn't work and what did you learn from it. So we can just see whether they're culturally, we want to hire people that are kind of lifelong learners, that have got a growth mindset. We want to kind of test for those people. And then go on.
No, I was just going to say, going down a bit of a different rabbit hole. One of the things that one of the questions I always ask, and hopefully this is a little bit of a nugget. I always ask they can provide me an OP of their current company. And if they do, they're automatically done. I don't care how good they are. Sharing other companies' information is not okay with me. So that's just one question that I ask.
Oh, yeah, so it's a test for professionalism, isn't it? And it's like, well, if you hired that person would they treat you with the respect? What if they? I think if anyone just is really bad mouthing a previous employer, it's just not a good look. Often when there's a conflict, it takes two to tango, so it's not quite sure who was the party that was at fault in the conflict. So I think if you've got those conflicts with a previous employer and you're looking for a job, you should keep quiet about it. So so we ask this set of questions. Then what we do, which is I think kind of interesting, the halo effect also applies to these questions. Well, partly what will happen is someone will say they know the power of the fact that they went to Harvard, or they know the power of the fact that they worked at Facebook, Meta, and so they'll try and shoehorn that into any of their answers. But also you get the halo effect from, if someone's first answer is really good, you tend to interpret all their following answers as being better. So we actually split up the questions so they're all independently scored, where you can't see which questions belong to which candidate. You just get a question and an answer, and you rate it from 1 to 5. We also write a little guide of what a good. The other thing is everyone has a different approach to like what's 3 stars, what's 4 stars, what's 5 stars. People in America tend to give higher ratings. People in the UK will give slightly lower. People in the Netherlands will give slightly lower, and people in Eastern Europe will give even lower. So a 3-star rating from someone in Eastern Europe, on our side, on the employment side, might be worth a 5-star from someone in America. So you have to have a clear guide of what does a 1-star answer look like, what does a 2-star, what does a 3-star. So you're trying to create that kind of consistency. So all the questions get split up, and you score a batch of questions at the same time, not knowing which one belonged to which candidate at all. So you've seen no name, you've seen no CV, all you've got is the questions. Normally 3 to 4 people will rate those questions, and then they're combined together at the back end, and you get a score for the candidate. And we sort of find that the people that have got more than 3.5 stars on average across all the questions are people that it's worth taking to a screening interview. So it sounds probably quite complicated, but you can use a platform to do it, or you could do it with Typeform. I really don't think it would be that. It'd be a bit more manual process. But I think that very first stage takes out a ton of the biases that are most likely to trip you up. You're really just evaluating people on the quality of their answers rather than any of the extraneous information. And our initial experience has been the people that we're putting through to screening interview, there's a huge diversity, and there are definitely people that came through to that when we look at their CV, you just know you would never ever have asked that person for an interview if it hadn't been for the fact they've done well on the questions. And that, I think, for us is one of the key ways that we measure it.
So what happens, you're a small company, you don't have a bunch of people working for you that could split up all these questions. Would you just, what would your approach be if you're just a solopreneur?
Yeah, so if you're the only person that's going to score it, the key thing is to have them apply through the questions format anyway. You're getting rid of most of the biases there anyway. You're getting rid of the university, the company bias, the sex, the age, the religious, all that. So you're already taking a massive step. And also, I'll come on to the next stage of the process. So we do a fairly standard screening interview where we're just checking that it feels right. That's just because we don't want to commit to a proper in-depth interview, which could be anywhere from an hour to 3 hours long, without just making sure that mostly it's about cultural fit, that screening interview. So we do that. Then when we do the in-depth interview, there's the normal way of doing an interview, and this is an old school way of doing it, but I think a lot of people that haven't been trained in recruitment would probably go through this process. Is you get the CV and you go through the CV and you chat about some of their previous jobs, and maybe have a little bit of a chat about their personal life, or you might start with a bit of chit chat. So you talk about the fact that you've both been skiing, or you chat about the places you've been on holiday, or where you live, or oh my God, you come from my hometown, that's so cool. What you know, all of that is creating massive amounts of bias as well. So that in-depth interview has to change as well. So the way that we do that is we have a standard set of questions that we ask. If people want to look this up, actually, there's a great book called Work Rules by Laszlo Bock, who was the head of HR for Google. And that book is fantastic, goes into a load of detail on all of this. But so there's a massive difference between that sort of chit-chatty interview and what's called competency-based interviewing, which again is just being really clear about the skills you're testing for and asking for specific examples of where that person has demonstrated those skills, or hypotheticals, like what would you do in this situation, and get them to talk through that in detail. And a load of stuff about cultural fit. What kind of person are you really looking for? We're really keen on people that are lifelong learners and people that are prepared to take risks, because that's how we think you get rapid growth. So we're always looking for examples of where people have demonstrated those sort of behaviors in previous jobs. Again, what we do is we have a standard set of questions, and for each question, there are 2 or 3 people that sit in on that in-depth interview, and they all score the questions out of 5 independently according to how well they've scored them, and they have a guide to say what a good answer looks like. Which I understand that's probably a bit heavy for the sort of solo entrepreneurs hiring the first few people, but even if you're doing it for yourself, you should have an idea of what a good answer looks like, and you should score it out of 5 for yourself. If you don't do the scoring as you go through, what tends to happen is either the first question has an outsized impact or the last question has an outsized impact. You forget kind of the stuff in the middle. Your first impression is great and then everything sounds fantastic, or the last one sounds great, so it leaves you with a good impression at the end. If you go through a rigorous process of scoring, you get a much fairer process. So you can remove the bias however you like. We also then compare those scores independently, sort of privately. We don't get together on the chat and say, so what did you think? Because if you have that interview, that sort of process, then the first person says, I thought they were fantastic. And the person that thought, I didn't think they were very good, then feels a bit embarrassed about saying that. So they then say, oh yeah, they were quite good. Yeah, I quite like them too. So particularly if the person that speaks first is the more senior person in the organization. So we score those independently and we look at those scores. And that actually stopped us from hiring someone earlier this year. 2 people in that interview thought the person was fantastic, and the third person just didn't at all. And that really made us reevaluate. In the end, we didn't offer that person a job, but that would have been completely hidden, I think, in the traditional hiring process, because the first 2 people would have been like, which one of them was me, would have been like, this is brilliant, this person's so fantastic, and the third person would probably have stayed quiet about it. So I understand that if you don't have 3 people to do interviews, you don't get that benefit of doing that, but you still get a lot of value from being rigorous about thinking about the questions that are right and scoring someone and coming up with adding a bit more science to it.
Yeah, I like that process. I've never done that before, and it makes complete sense. So Kelsey, be prepared. All right, so we are getting towards the bottom of the hour. Love to hear, like, we've got lots of people on right now. Love to hear, what you think about this. What is your hiring process? Nightmare, or do you like what you're doing? If so, share some of the information that you do during your hiring process. Okay, we do have a great giveaway today. Hashtag Wheel of Kelsey, tag 2 people, and you'll get a second entry. Ben, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about this this business. Hopefully you can tell, like, hiring the right people is so critical for your business. So the prize is to speak to me one-on-one, where I can talk you through your recruitment process and give you some input on how you would add this stuff that I've learned to your process.
So I am telling you, this is priceless, because I've gone through it for years and just did it the wrong way. And if you can have an expert tell you what to look for, or what not to look for, or just what we're talking about today, biases, it's going to make things so much easier for anybody listening. So that's hashtag Wheel of Kelsey, tag 2 people, and you'll get a second entry. Now, Kelsey, let's go to one of our sponsors. A big thank you to our sponsor, Post Purchase Pro, the only complete A to Z done-for-you real email and text marketing service built specifically for Amazon sellers. Post Purchase Pro creates all of your digital assets 100% for you, from marketing inserts, complete sales funnels, email follow-up sequences, and weekly email promotions. They manage and optimize everything for you to drive more sales, get higher ranking, and receive more reviews on Amazon. So check out Post Purchase Pro now to see if you too will see enormous growth like their nearly 500 clients worldwide. That's Post Purchase Pro at postpurchasepro.com/lunch. Okay, so we are back again. If you want to enter, it's hashtag Willa Kelsey, tag 2 people, and we'll get you that second entry. Let's continue. What would be the next step that you see in the process?
So after that in-depth interview, we have it's sort of 2 steps, but it's sort of one. I'll explain why I'm saying that in a second. So I think that generally job interviews are poorly correlated with success in the job. You can improve them by doing this competency-based interviewing that I talk about, but on its own, it's hard to really reveal whether someone's going to be good at doing the job. So the final stage for us is we set people a work sample test. So we come up with a project which is very closely correlated to the kind of work that they'd be doing in the job itself, and we get them to do that job. The reason why I said there's another stage is I will then speak to everyone that we're hiring. Okay, so we're about 40 people at the moment. We've got about 9 open jobs at the moment, but everyone that's been through the in-depth interview and we like them and we're putting through to that final stage, I'm going to speak to everyone. And the reason that is that I've always felt what frustrated me in my first company was I always did a really good job of selling the company. Why should that person come and work for us? Because I was aware that that candidate has other options. And then I felt when I handed the recruitment process over to other people, what they tend to do is they just thought, oh, this is a person applying for a job. They're obviously really keen to have a job. We should just ask them loads of questions and then we'll decide whether we offer them the job or not. And I thought it's not really like that. That person has to, we're competing against a lot of other good companies for that person. So the stage that I do is I speak to everyone and I make it really clear up front that I'm not interviewing them and it's just their chance to interview me. But I will tell them all about the company strategy. We believe in being very transparent about what we're doing. I talk to them about equity participation in the company, and I just try and make sure that I also believe that the right job for someone is where they're taking a really significant step up and they're going to learn lots of stuff on the job. That's sort of difficult because I think a lot of times when you're hiring people, you want to hire someone that can just walk in and just be brilliant from day one. But that person that has all the experience you need is taking a sideways step. And I'd always question, why is that person taking a sideways step into a job where they're not going to improve and advance as a person? So I'm always just checking that that person is taking that step up, that there's a way that they're going to be, and I'm doing it on their behalf for them, because I'm not assessing them. I'm just making sure that they are clear that they're going to get some real kind of career advancement and learning out of the job. And I talk about equity participation. We give everyone that works for us equity in the company, so I want people to understand why we do that and why that's really important. So I think that just the key takeaway there, I think, for everyone is it's a competitive process, and it's really easy just to assume that because they applied, they really want to buy the product. Come and work for you, but actually that if you've got to really make sure that it's right for them. And then that final stage, when they do the work sample test, it's just a great insight into how they think and how they work. The other thing it's amazing for is just, I love people that want to go above and beyond. Going above and beyond is partly, it's a mindset of people that are really dedicated and persistent, and they've got high levels of conscientiousness. Those people tend to work hard, so there's a great people to employ, but also they tend to put the extra effort in if they really want to work for the company. And one of the highest correlations for me in success in the company is them really wanting to work for us versus just having another job. If they really buy into what we're doing, they can really see how we can help them grow as a person. That person is the person we want to hire, because they're going to come in and they're going to try hard, and that is like 90% of it. So that work sample test does 2 things. It evaluates the skills, and it assesses that kind of conscientiousness, persistence, and everything. So that is a really fantastic step for us.
Is there a test site where, I know this happens quite a bit, where people will say they are an expert in something, expert in Excel, expert in workspace, expert in social media? Are there sites that you go to have them tested for that as well?
We don't test on those things. I think one of the things that's missing from our process that I'd like to introduce is some sort of standardized testing. I think yeah, Excel. If you're bright and it's important for you to learn Excel, you can learn Excel. There's courses for that. So I don't worry too much if other people have got those very specific skills. Because I think they can learn them. And like I was saying, if we're hiring someone to do Facebook marketing, I want them to have a level of experience in Facebook marketing so that they're not kind of making obvious mistakes. But everything's going to change over the next couple of years. They're going to have to demonstrate that learning. So I'm more interested in people having demonstrated that they have been able to learn things in the past than they have a specific set of skills. But if you read this work rules book by Laszlo Bock, there's loads of good stuff in there. The thing that makes people, what I want to hire is people that have just the raw intellectual capability and then have the motivation to do a good job. And those people can achieve just so much more than other people. So the thing that I'd like to introduce is as a sort of standard test on numerical and verbal reasoning. We used to have it in a previous company. It was a very basic test. It took about 15 minutes to do, but it was a very high predictor of whether people had the basic level of smarts, because that's your building block of acquiring all this information. The other thing is there are tests for conscientiousness, and Laszlo Bock talks about that quite a lot in his book. We had a test in a previous company for drive, which is a similar kind of thing. So there are external parties that can provide these tests. We haven't introduced that into our process yet, but we're only a year and a half old, but I definitely want to introduce that, because if you have all of those things, you've taken out the bias, you've asked them a load of questions that are really clearly going to determine whether they have the skills and the cultural fit. They do a work sample test, and they've proven they've got the kind of intellectual ability and the desire to learn. That person is just going to be fantastic for your company.
Now, what about other things? So I don't know if you're hiring people overseas, but let's say it might be a computer, it might be an iPhone, it might be their internet. Do you take a look at what they're using, and if they don't have up to par, like let's say their internet sucks, do you upgrade their internet for them?
Well, we haven't had the problem of that specifically, but we would if we could. We provide everyone with the tools that they need to do their job. So that could be, if they're working from home, it might need a desk and a chair, as well as a computer. So we'll provide all of that. We also provide offices in London and Barcelona. And if someone wanted to rent an office because they couldn't work at home, we would also provide them with a co-working space or something like that. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna hire someone that's going to be fantastic for your company, you can't then handicap them by them not having the right tools for the job. It's like investing in training. I love this session of like, what if I pay on this training, spend all this money on training, and then they leave? And the answer is, well, what if you don't invest in their training and they stay?
Yeah. Great point. A great point. That's a nugget. Yeah. Or like even with the training, I've heard of, I don't like this, but if you're trained, they don't get paid. I don't believe in that at all. I mean, if somebody's spending an hour in your company, whether it's even doing what you were just saying, providing an example of their work, I pay them. Nobody does anything for free. And I see I don't see a lot. I've heard of a few, and I've talked to a few people that think it's great that they get this free training out of a person. And during their training, I'm talking about, they're already onboarding. I don't think that's a great idea.
No, I think if someone starts working for you, they start getting paid. There is the ideal test for someone really would be if they came and worked for you for 3 days, and you should definitely pay them for that. That obviously is really difficult to do in practice. I mean, if someone isn't working, maybe you can do it, but it's really hard. Someone's going to just leave a job and come and work for you for 3 days, but that would be a great way of really getting to know someone. So the work sample test is our kind of way around that. I think I want to touch on a couple of other things that I think people often put a lot of store in that don't really work very well. You get a lot of interview chats about kind of killer interview questions. hopefully you'll see from what I'm saying is the chances that it's going to be one question that's going to be the real determinant of whether they're right for you or not. There might be ways of ruling someone out, like your question of are they ethical. There might be questions that rule people out, but there won't be one question that the answer to which will be able to grade you on a scale of bad to excellent. It requires this detailed approach of going through a number of different factors. So and often those killer interview questions tend to sound very clever, but actually not tell you very much about the person. So I kind of stay clear of those. And the other thing similar that is references. A lot of people put a lot of store in references. References, I think, should absolutely be done, and they help you identify people that you shouldn't hire by someone gives a bad reference for cultural fit. Bad behaviors, bad temper, or whatever it is, that's a kind of red flag, and you shouldn't hire those people. But no one's going to be able to tell you whether someone that they hired in the past is going to be fantastic for your company. It's a different job, and some people can be very high performing in one job and very poor performing in another, and some people can be very poor in one job and very good in another. In fact, I always try and bear that in mind, because if you do have to let someone go, what you're not saying to them is you are a bad person that can't do a good job. What you're saying is you're not a good fit for us, and you should find somewhere you're a better fit, because you'll just enjoy life much more, and it'll be much better for you and much better for the company you work with. And if that's said genuinely, and I do deeply believe it, I think people react to that much better. It is very difficult, because if you're getting dismissed from a job, you are being told you're not good enough. But yeah, you can be clear that you're not. It's not that you're not good enough. You're not right for this specific job at this specific time in your life, and you can go and do something different. There's that classic thing about don't assess a fish on its ability to climb a tree. It's find the if you're a tree, find monkeys, and if you're a sea, find fish. And that's what you're looking for.
Do you ever have a probation period, a 3-month or a month-long probation?
Yeah, we have a 6-month probation, and I think the really key thing there is it can't be a moving target. You've got to be really clear about what good looks like after 3 months, after 6 months, and you've got to just make sure that you're constantly communicating with someone. No one should get to the 6-month period and then just suddenly find out of the blue you're not good enough, you leave the company. They've got to be really, in fact, just all the way through. No one should ever have the experience where you just turn around one day and say, sorry, you're not good enough for us, you've got to go. Unless maybe there was they breached the values, and there was something, they exposed the behavior that they've been doing a good job. That could be an example where they get they have a surprise. But if it's a performance related issue, they should know all the way through. So yeah, I think probation is really important. And be really clear about what the end of the probation looks like as well is really important.
One of my friends, he's excellent at this, but he talks about providing different types of non-monetary bonuses to help retain people. Now, you were talking about equity, but he will provide for maybe a 3-day vacation, or just give a day off or something like that throughout the year, just to keep the people interested in staying on with his company. He's in the IT business, so his employees get picked off, every once in a while by recruiters. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to disagree with that, and not that I don't think like you value your staff, treat them well. That's all good, but for me, the critical issue in a job that's going to make someone want to stay is that they're continually be giving opportunities to learn and advance and improve. If you're constantly learning, you're thinking, wow, this company is amazing because I'm just becoming a better person, and anytime I leave this job, I can get an even better job because I've acquired all these skills. But I don't want to leave because next month I'm going to acquire this additional level of skills, and then in a year's time I'll have even more. And the other part is to really recognize people when they're doing a good job. So if people aren't learning and they aren't getting recognized for doing a great job, but they get an extra 3 days off for holiday, they're going to leave anyway. So the fundamental thing is making sure that the person is constantly, they're working on interesting challenges, they're getting that sense of satisfaction of overcoming a difficult challenge, or of failing, but failing gloriously, and people not minding, because that's part of our culture, is to say we're going to take big bets, and sometimes these things aren't going to work, and we totally understand that. Yeah, that's, being part of that culture where you're high performing, people are taking these risks. They're learning lots as they go. They're learning from the failures as well as the successes. They're being recognized for doing a good job. That's a job that's really hard to leave. And I think we should always pay market salary rates.
Right.
But you could pay someone less money. Often people would say, I'll take less money to do this amazing job, because what are you trying to prioritize in your life? Are you trying to prioritize being happy and well rewarded, kind of with the kind of recognition, or do you just want lots of money and be pretty miserable in your job? I know which one I'd go for.
Yeah.
Although
Exactly.
the money's always tempting, but
Yeah. No, absolutely. I understand that one completely. So now you've done all this. Are there any unexpected benefits to putting all this work in and going through the system that you just talked about?
I don't know if they're unexpected benefits. I mean, the benefits we expected, we are definitely seeing. We expected that if you're blind about race and sex, you'll have a more diverse organization. And diversity isn't important because you've got some kind of checkbox of, do we have this gender, how many BAME people do we have, or that doesn't really make any sense. You want people with genuinely different backgrounds, because they'll think about problems in different ways and solve them in interesting ways. Just a note on diverse teams. So there's been quite good research that show, this is research by the what are they called? I forgot what they're called, the Neuro something Institute. Anyway, diverse teams tend to be more effective, because when they're tackling problems, they have different points of views get brought into the discussion, and that process of discussion and disagreement creates better decisions. The experience of people working in those teams is that they feel less effective. So if you have a group of people that all think in the same way, someone brings up a problem, and the first person says, I know what we do, we're going to do this. And the next person says, yeah, let's do it. And the third person says, yeah, right, we're on. And it feels really effective, and you're just taking decisions and you're moving at speed, but you're making maybe bad decisions. Whereas if you have those different point of views, women, different races, people that have had different educational upbringings, different socioeconomic groups, they say, well, hang on, is that really going to work? Because maybe this. And then the feeling is, oh, it's hard to work. And so people are disagreeing and you have to discuss it, and you're going slower, but your decision is better at the end. So that's why you have diversity. I mean, we tackled it at the beginning, like, why do you want diversity? You don't want diversity just so you can say, hey, we're a really diverse organization. You want diversity because it brings lots of people from different backgrounds. And as I mentioned earlier, I've definitely noticed there have been people, we hired a guy to be an Amazon analyst. He may even be watching today. So Gabby, if you're watching, hello. I just thought, he'd been working, like one of his previous jobs had been working in a phone shop, and this guy's incredibly analytical, and he's been like one of our top hires. And I think he would never got into interview stage with us if it hadn't been for the process that we followed. So it's not that it's unexpected, but it's really very satisfying when you have it. So and we have ended up very diverse. We're about 50%. We've got a 50-50 male-female split. We've got a ton of different nationalities. We have a thing when we meet up as a company that someone will say, let's go out and have a meal from my kind of country of origin, and that could be Italian, Nigerian, Sri Lankan. We've got people from Romania. I mean, everywhere, just like a ton of different kind of ethnicities, and so I think that's worked really well for us.
Now, I had a question here. And I just pre-interview and talking about picking your battles. Why is picking your battles your key for life?
So I think it's sort of, I think like, what does it mean to think strategically? So I think thinking strategically about picking battles, and I think it's about the allocation of scarce resources in your life. You can't do everything. So from a life perspective, if you want to have a bigger house than everyone, well, I question whether I'm going to talk about material things, but you might say you're optimized for kind of contentment or family or friends or other things first. But let's say you've got all of that sorted. if you say, well, I want to have a bigger car than everyone, a bigger house, a better car, more expensive holidays, better clothes, eat in fine restaurants, you can't do all of that, and you can't compete. Not that we should be competing, but there is a temptation of kind of competing with people. So Gabby's just said hi. He is watching. If you try and be better, like have better stuff than everyone in all those categories, you can't really do it. So you've got to think what's really important to you as an individual. Maybe the eating out is something you really enjoy doing, so spend less on the clothes and spend more on the eating out, and be sort of very purposeful about it. Because if you think about what's really going to deliver you the most value in your life, then you pick your battles, and you choose. You can win by prioritizing your expenditure into the right areas. And a lot of people don't really do that. Quite a good trick is to kind of fast forward and say, where do you want to be in 10 years time, and what does that look like? And then look at where you're actually spending your time. It's very easy just to spend time doing things like browsing Twitter or whatever, but I've got some family goals, I've got some fitness goals, I've got some friendship goals. But if you don't work on those things and be purposeful about them, then it's easy just to let life sort of slip through your fingers watching Netflix or whatever. We've got tons of time in our lives. Even if you're working really hard as a solo entrepreneur and you're doing 10-hour days, you still got another 6 hours in the day when you're not working and you're not asleep. You can do a ton of stuff, so be really purposeful about it. I think on the business side, I just have a big believer that work out what you're really good at and double down on that. A lot of people think I'm not very good at X, so they spend a load of time trying to improve that element of themselves. But actually, if they double down on the thing they were really good at, they're going to achieve a lot more. And you can always get someone else to do the bits that you're not good at. And I think that also applies on a company point of view. If you've got a number of different products or brands or whatever it is, but let's say you've got more than one product, what tends to happen is the one that's struggling soaks up all the attention because it's having problems, and you have to deal with those problems, and so that sucks attention because you've got this allocation of scarce resources. It sucks attention away from the things that are going really well. And if I put a unit of attention into a product that's going really well, and I can 2x it because it's already going really well, and it's already making me £10,000 a month gross profit, and I can make it to 20x. The product that's struggling and is making 2,000 gross profit, and I can put the same unit of effort into it, and I can increase it by 10%, but then I get $200 of extra profit from the same amount of effort. And I think it's very tempting to focus on the stuff that isn't working well and put all of your time and effort into that. So pick your battles, work out what's working well and focus on that, work out what you're good at, focus on that, work out what you really want and focus on that, and make sure you're allocating time accordingly.
Great answer. Like it. All right. And I agree 100%, by the way, whether you care about that or not, but no, that's a great answer. All right. So we're going to be going into some of the questions. If you do have a question, please post it anytime soon, because we're going to get into this. Then we're going to get into the Wheel of Kelsey. And by the way, the Wheel of Kelsey today, hashtag Wheel of Kelsey, tag 2 people. You'll get a second entry. Gabe, I don't think you'll be entering unless you want your one-on-one with Ben. Anyways, Ben, one more time, what exactly are you giving away today?
Yeah, so if you've heard what I've been saying and you think this sounds really interesting and you want to know how to actually practically apply it to your own situation, I'm happy to spend some time going through your recruitment process and telling you how I would apply this to your specific situation.
Very good. All right, Kels, let's get into some questions.
Yeah, so we just have a few comments. We asked the audience about what was their experience hiring their team and if they had a positive or negative. Unfortunately, with Cool Hand 99, he said he's had a VA that cost him way more than he made me. And I've heard some people in talks say that like you should, or how should I phrase this? Is there a way that you should value an employee when you're hiring them and say like 3 months from now or 6 months from now, if they are worth it in your hiring system? Like, is there a certain amount of money that they should be bringing in? I've heard like 3 times their pay, like you should see that value. Or
Yeah, although you may find it hard to measure that because someone may not be. I mean, if someone's doing a sales job, yes, maybe you can say that they've got to bring in a certain amount of money. But if someone's in the VA example, they're touching loads of little bits of your business, how do you assess which bits generated profit and which bits didn't? I think I don't have an easy answer, because the answer is you have to have a really clear definition of what good looks like, and you may only have that definition of what good looks like after you've hired someone and it hasn't worked out, and you kind of know what bad looks like. So I don't think it's really easy, because experience tells. But I do have a kind of rule of thumb for that kind of assistant job is a good person from day one makes your life feel easier. You may have to put some time into training them, and that's obviously really critical. How clearly are they briefed? Are they clear about what good looks like? Are they know what they ought to be doing? But someone that's really good will ask you the right questions to make sure they're doing the right job. You'll just feel this sense of trust that if you give them a task to be done, it's just going to get done.
Right.
And if you don't have that level of trust, I would just break it off quite quickly and find someone else where you do have it, because that's where it gets wrong. You start worrying that they're not going to do a good job. So you then start kind of overseeing what they're doing a bit more. They then actually give up all attempts to be independent and use their own initiative, because they know that you're kind of watching them. And then they end up in a situation where they're doing what they think you might want them to do, rather than what you've told them to do or what they think is the right thing to do. And then they're really not working in the real world at all. So I think making sure you're really clear about what good looks like, making sure they're properly trained to do the job, but then just evaluate quite early on, do you trust them to do what you've asked them to do? And if you don't have that trust, I think you should try and find someone else.
Yeah, I'd just like to add too that sometimes it's not a monetary value. Sometimes it's stress relief, or freeing up some time so you can go on and do something else during your day. So it's not necessarily, this built-in strict ROI that you're going to see. And sometimes it's definitely over time. So you might be doing, or the VA might be working on repetitive tasks or other small, what I would call the $10 an hour job. And so I break things into 4 categories: 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. They're not the dollar figure. It's just how I break it up. And while you're giving these repetitive tasks, you could be working on the 1,000, or what I'd like to say is the $10,000 tasks that are going to be able to make you grow your business. That might be over time. Yeah, that might be creating marketing strategies, or find different sales channels. And you won't see that until you can get some time or some pressure taken off with hiring a really good contractor or person that can help out with your company.
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, you're always going to be working on the unknown. So if you work out how something works and it becomes a known thing, and you can write it down and you can train someone to do it for you, you should hire someone to do that. A lot of that stuff, like you're talking about marketing and trying new channels, you don't know how it works. You got to try it for yourself. You got to learn how it works. That's something you should be doing. But once you said, all right, I've worked out how this bit works, then you can document it. You can turn it to a process. You can hire someone, and they can take over doing that part of it. And that is how you scale as an entrepreneur. It gives you that much more. It's always difficult because it's always expressed as a cost up front, but you don't see the benefit of the new things you can do. Those you have to create. Once you create the time to do them, it's not obvious. So it's always a tricky step, but I think always worth doing if you can afford it.
Very good. Next question.
All right. So this is a little quote that Andrew sent us. He said, train people so they can leave, but treat them so they won't. And that's from Sir Richard. So thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, I love that.
The last comment, just I guess some background from Tony. He was saying what his experience was like. He said he was overpaying someone for full time from the US for $1,000, but he's pulled it back to around $500 to $600, and it's better for him, and it's a new salary range that seems to be working. So awesome. Thanks for letting us know, Tony. And yeah, I think that's it for comments and questions from our side.
Tony's sitting in his brand new office. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think you're off to a hook. If people want to
Awesome.
get a hold of you, Ben, how do they do that?
I think you've posted my Twitter. My DMs are open on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way. I'm Ben Fletcher on Twitter. If you type up Ben Fletcher on LinkedIn, you'll find me on there as well. So either of those two are good.
Very good. All right. It's putting up. Okay, please just put up your information. That's great. So let's have a word from the sponsor, and then we'll get back to Wheel of Kelsey. This episode is brought to you by ClearAds. Looking to maximize your Amazon ads ROI? Well, whether you need full service or just one or two services, ClearAds Amazon advertising experts drive outstanding results across the Amazon marketplace. With over 9 years of experience, their Amazon PPC managers have helped thousands of companies to drive down their cost of sales and scale up their revenue, profits, and orders. And with their unrivaled Amazon DSP expertise, ClearAds DSP services are tailored to your brand. You really can't go wrong. Get in touch today with ClearAds' dedicated team by visiting the link in the description or visiting clearads.co.uk. And remember, more sales, better ROI, incredible growth. Check out ClearAds today. All right. Ben, you've never seen this before. Turn your volume down and enjoy.
It's time for the Wheel of Kelsey.
All right. Thank you, everyone who entered the Wheel of Kelsey for today. We do this every single podcast. And if you are the winner, please email me k@lunchwithnorm.com and we can go ahead and spin the wheel. So here we go. I'll shuffle it up and let's see who today's winner is. So again, that's k@lunchwithnorm if you are the winner.
Oh, is it
It
Tom?
looks like
Taco Community. All right.
All right. All right. Awesome. So again, please email me k@lunchwithnorm.com to get in contact with Ben and receive your prize. So thank you everyone for entering, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
All right, Ben, thank you for coming on the show today. It was great having you. Great topic, by the way.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So stick around. You're going to be removed from the podcast, and I'll come back in 2 seconds to talk to you. But anyways, thank you. And all right, everybody. I hope you learned a little bit about the topic today. I thought it was a great topic, something that not a lot of people are talking about, but what useful information. I wish I would have known more about this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I made all these mistakes. So anyways, I hope you learned something. Let us know if you did. I'd like to hear your comments. You can post it in the Facebook community group as well. Kelsey, where are you?
Here I am. Yes, thank you, everyone. I sure enjoyed today's episode. It was a lot of great information, and I know we're currently looking to hire some people too. So I definitely took some notes from today's episode. So if you are new to the podcast, make sure you join our Facebook group. That's Lunch with Norm, Amazon FBA and eCommerce Collective. Links are in the descriptions. So you can join there, ask your questions about selling on Amazon and e-commerce. We do giveaways over there and a whole bunch of fun stuff. And you get to just be a part of the community and meet the other beardos that listen to the podcast. Also, let me see. Don't forget to smash those like buttons if you enjoyed today's episode. Let us know your thoughts about today's episode. It was a little different than I think our usual episodes, which I quite enjoyed. And let us know your thoughts if there's any other topics that you'd like us to cover or even guests that you'd like us to reach out to. We're happy to take a look and see what we can do to make it possible. So that's that. And I think we're all done.
All right. Very good. So join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And I say this every episode. Thank you for being part of the community. We could never do this without you. We just love it. All the engagement and all the comments and in the group, it's awesome. So thank you for being part of the community, and we will see you on Friday.
Entrepreneur.